Larry.
And we're recording.
My friend.
Okay.
Limor. Nice to meet you.
Okay, yeah, we're recording, guys. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you on the weekend of July 4th, right? So happy July 4th to everyone.
How are you?
And next week we are going to be meeting in the kitchen. Okay, in the synagogue's kitchen. We're going to be meeting at the Levine Center. There'll be a table there. We can all sit there, start our class, and go to the kitchen, and see what it means to be keeping kosher in a Jewish not a home, but in the synagogue. We'll talk about a lot of the things that we've discussed over this past course on kashrut, and we'll sit around there. And so you can enter through the other building or enter for here and pass by. We'll explain that to you. There'll be signs. Okay, so note that for next week. I do want to just share in the chat. I'm going to share the article. Give me a second. With Kosher.
Wasn't even.
Okay, so if you're on Zoom, you could download the article that I just put now in the. Okay. Okay, so all the things that say is done, we already talked about. Okay, and anyone that hasn't been here in a while, right? We talked about in our previous lessons, they're all recorded, they're all on YouTube, you can watch them. We talked about the meaning of the word kosher. We talked about the rationale behind keeping kosher, especially in today's day and age with all the different arguments saying, oh, maybe it's outdated, maybe it's only something of the past, maybe it was only done for medical reasons, etc., etc. And now maybe it's not relevant. So we addressed a lot of these things in there. We talked about the instances in the Bible where it talks about keeping kosher to some degree, like with Noah and the commandment that he gets from God not to eat any live flesh or blood. Okay, we talked about that. Then we talked about this interesting scene where Abraham is feeding the angels who comes to visit him, but serving them butter along with the meats. How we reconcile that. And the next thing we find also in the book of Genesis is the Gida Nashe, the sciatic nerve that Jews don't eat because of Jacob that used to walk, and limp because of his interaction with the angel that gave him the name Israel. Then we talked about the more classical appearances of the verse, Lo tevashel bigdi b'chalev imo, do not cook a kid in its mother milk, that appears 3 times. And we talked about why is it there, what exactly does it mean? Is it only a kid in its mother's milk, or can we extend it to what we do today, which is, separating meat and milk altogether? Then we looked at the Bible talking about the kosher and the non-kosher animals, trying to understand with the fish, all the fins and the scales and what makes a kosher fish. We talked about the birds, and we talked about also the animals that have, I always forget the hooves, the split hooves and etc. And another part which we didn't address so much, but it's also in the Bible about eating fat and other parts, kosher, not kosher. And then we moved on how to prepare kosher meat, the kosher slaughtering, draining out the blood, the inspection of it, what makes, even after it's slaughtered in a kosher way, how do you inspect it and make sure it's not a treif, as we call it, restricted portions that we're not allowed to eat, soaking and salting the meat. And then we started talking in the last, one or two lessons about basar v'chalav, meat and dairy. Again, why is it 3 times in the Torah? Separate eating of milk and meat. Then today we're going to talk about we're going to move to separate dishes. But we already talked about how many hours in between, right? We said like there's 6 hours, 3 hours, and most people were not aware of the 1 hour custom, which is really used to be the prevalent custom, even in the Shulchan Aruch and all the code writers in the Middle Ages times, and also myself, just observe 1 hour between kosher. That's how I grew up. Talked about kosher. Yeah, okay. So today we got the kosher version. So let's open the article, because I'm reminding everyone the reason we're reading this article is because we believe it's a very good and comprehensive guide to keeping kosher. It's very abbreviated, but it's packed. Every sentence here is packed with a lot of very important information. And it comes from a book called The Observant Life, which is written by a few scholars from the conservative movement. So it also brings that angle from the conservative movement. And then you can see where it differs from the Orthodox movement on a lot of things. And today, interestingly enough, we're going to see a few big major differences between the conservative and Orthodox movement. But there's no way you would ever study this with a Orthodox rabbi in a million years.
Well, you can study it, but.
No, but they will never teach you
What page is
this
this?
specific. We are now on page 321. And we're at the last paragraph. Okay. And today we started talking, we're going to start talking about natural unprocessed foods. So let's start reading, and if I have a comment, I will stop and make the comment, which is usually the case. And if you have comments or questions, so please don't be shy. You're never shy, so find the medium in between so we can continue our class.
My goodness.
Natural unprocessed foods, such as fruits and vegetables, may be purchased without any formal kashrut designation. No one argues that. It's very, very clear.
Rabbi,
Okay,
what
yeah.
about broccoli?
Well,
For insects.
inspecting items, we're going to talk about in a different place, but that's a very good question. There's broccoli, there's cauliflower.
Yeah, there was a little.
Cilantro.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Lettuce we
things
talked
where
about.
little bugs come in, okay? And then you have to wash it carefully and inspect it, make sure, it's not
Painted.
yeah, it's not tainted. I have to be, I was washing strawberries here the other day, and then I still saw some, and I washed it pretty well, I thought.
Yeah.
But you still see, they somehow stick and they're there. Okay,
Easy answer is,
I don't
if you
know.
don't like it, you don't eat it.
No, the easy answer is to wear your glasses.
Yes.
yeah,
I
So-
thought the bugs were just another source of protein.
You're right.
right, so then the question is also, how big the bug is, needs to be, and you have to use.
Get out your microscope.
You have to take a microscope or no, seriously, that's the question. And it's basically the law is if you cannot see it with your own eyes, if you carefully inspect, like under the light, etc., not in a dark room, but in a proper, like you use the best of your ability, you don't have to inspect more than that. However, there are very more strict opinions that say, why not use technology? And if we're able to use, more ways so we can avoid more bugs, why not? The problem is that they're very microscopic bugs, and that you could see me with a very good microscope, and then you wouldn't be able to eat broccoli, cauliflower, a lot of these things.
Amazing
Maybe
they
not
didn't start
much.
the death level getting rid of
Rabbi,
it.
how would that apply to the permitted insects? in the Torah.
The permitted insects are not that size. The small insects are not kosher, and we don't know which are kosher or not. So you can't take a risk. If you have a doubt about something from the Bible, so there's no doubt, you cannot eat it.
I was just thinking that if you have a permitted insect and that insect, flits from, wherever.
Maybe
So if
it's
they
stuck in a
landed
piece of
on
hand before you
something, then
got to
it
you.
wouldn't be kosher anymore, even though the insect is kosher.
Isn't it also true with vegetables that the earth has to rest every 7 years and you're not supposed to plant on the seventh year? And so you wouldn't eat vegetables from that piece of land?
No, you can eat vegetables, but you can't sell it or make profit on it. But you can definitely eat it on the seventh year. That is
Oh.
okay. That's not a problem.
Good to know.
And they would divide up their land holdings. They didn't
So,
let everything go foul.
uh,
Start while you try.
Okay, let's just focus back here. But you thoroughly wash, they should. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, you don't have to have any rabbinic supervision on it. However, if you buy them in Israel, okay, there are some requirements from a halachic point of view, from a Jewish legal point of view, to make them prepared like for eating, which means you have to give how do you call it, maaser, a tithe,
Tithing, yeah.
You have the tax.
Yeah.
a tax, like, right, like, so a tenth of all, like, you have a huge fruit container, a tenth of it needs to be, goes to the priest, okay? Some go to the Levite, some goes to the poor, okay? So there, you have to go through a certain process before you eat these fruits in Israel. So usually when you buy it in the supermarket or in the shuk, in the market, they already do it for you. And they would have a sign saying that these are okay, and then you can go and eat it. So you have to take that into consideration when you are in Israel. Okay. They should, however, be thoroughly washed before use, and that's for the reason we just talked before. And items. Oh, by the way, also sometimes they put I don't think now, but I do remember, I think in the 70s and 80s, they did sort of like put to polish apples and fruits so they would look nicer in the supermarket.
They still do that.
Yeah,
They
wax.
still do that, like wax,
Yeah.
okay? One would have to, make sure, like today, I think it's only naturally ingredients, but you would have to wash it well to get those parts as well, especially if it has, dairy products on it or anything of that sort. Items such as sugar and flour also do not require a hechsher. So here we have already something interesting. It is already processed. Okay, so we went through some kind of a machine. You don't just pick it from the field and eat it. But the assumption is that this sugar or this flour has gone through the same processing in the same machines. There's nothing that could make it, non kosher in any way. So therefore, we allow it. Okay, if it comes from a big factory, for sure. A good rule of thumb is this: if a food product has been through cooking or extensive processing, it should not be used unless it has a hechsher. Hechsher, we said, is the certificate of that a rabbi inspected it. As always, questions about which products require a hechsher or that can be used without a hechsher should be addressed to a rabbi. Okay. Suffice it to say, the changes in the food manufacturing process and in labeling laws have brought about two major results: a growing number of kashrut supervising agencies and an inability to rely simply on a casual perusal of a product's label. Fortunately, the amount and variety of food products under rabbinic supervision continue to grow. So first of all, it's true. I mean, there's like, you don't have such an issue these days with finding kosher products. That's a big thing. It is a very grown industry, and business makes a lot of money. So there's like a lot of competition there, and you know, and it doesn't always justify the amount of money being paid, especially in Israel. We know like there are a lot of unfortunate phenomena of like blackmailing, like, you know, if you don't do this and this, I won't give you your certification. Some things that sometimes don't even have to do with the certification. And that's really very unfortunate that it's being abused in that way, because I mean, in every business you have people that abuse their, you know, their authority and power, but especially in kashrut, you want to give it out, you want to give a good name. So if you're like a corrupt mashgiach or something like that, so like you're giving Judaism a bad name in that sense. But it is interesting, you know, for example, Larry, I think, brought like this thing, the orange juice. Oh, you saved it. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, from the Simply.
Pass it around.
Yeah,
Passover.
so right,
Yeah.
so I saw this on Passover as well. Thank you, Larry, for bringing it.
delicious.
This label that
From
says,
Simply Orange Juice. Okay,
kosher-
Sam's Club.
kosher for Passover. I saw the Ralphs, I saw it like everywhere. You know, so if you buy it, so we like in our family we have like a rule of that if you buy these products for Passover, okay, like orange juice, milk, etc., it could be kosher for Passover, okay, especially if it has a regular kosher label. But if you buy it like during Passover, so then we're a little bit more strict, and that requires to have a kosher for Passover certification. Okay, moving on. Page 322, food additives, and here's like a big dispute between the Orthodox and conservative movement. Okay,
Larry,
right? Oh,
Did you
put it
see
in
it?
your yearbook.
Yeah.
No, back there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
let me again put, and I see some people joined our chat. After, I will, we'll end this again. Here, so anyone that just joined us on Zoom, to download from the chat, the, okay, food additives. This is interesting. The conservative and Orthodox movements also differ with regard to the kashrut of certain food additives because of the chemical changes that take place during processing. Okay, the CJLS has determined that many additives are so totally reconstituted that they may be considered a totally new food, davar chadash, a new food, a new thing, and that their origins are therefore no longer of concern. Among the chemical additives considered kosher and parv by the Rabbinical Assembly, that's the conservative movement's body of rabbis, are dextrose, mono, and
Glycerides.
diglycerides, lactate, lactic acid, lecithin, pepsine, polysorbate 80. We don't need all these names, right? Sodium, sorbitol. Should one find an additive of unknown origin in the product without a hechsher, it is best to consult a rabbi for advice. Okay, so first of all, I would also consult a rabbi, someone who's an expert. I'm an expert in this, so I would ask the rabbi who's an expert on these things. But the interesting thing is that, let's say I have a food additives, and I add and I have milk in that product to begin with, and then in a chemical factory I change that food, and now it's like cooked. I say cooked with quote unquote because it changes its form. something completely different. Okay,
Waiting to donate.
Yeah, he's just.
sorry.
Or maybe you can just leave it right here.
So, yeah.
She's like,
No, I think she was talking to someone else. I turned off her account. So that food, if now I want to eat that and cook it, use it to cook with a meat dinner, can I do that? It was dairy to begin with.
no,
And you changed it to something.
No,
no,
why?
because the origin of the food is milk.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's very hard. I mean, I don't know how anybody runs a household like that.
right, so the point is, you wouldn't do that, okay? It's something that happens in a factory, because it has to change its chemical composure and structure completely, that it's something davar chadash, it is now something new. It is no longer milk product, okay? It now becomes a neutral parve product, which you could use with meat, okay? Now, that concept is not just a conservative movement. That's also in the Orthodox world. They just don't agree on the process, okay, of what can be and what can't be done. Okay, so and they also have this preference that although you are permitted to do this, we would rather that you use something that to begin with was part. Okay, so in a way, they are not 100% loyal to the halachic rationale. Now, I want you to look at this thing that's called Davar Chadash in this article I gave you. Could someone share it? Because I want to read that because this is like a very important concept, and I shared it with the people in the chat. And I thought it's also interesting for you to see how the conservative movement makes decisions. Okay, when you ask the rabbi, and you tell me, and you sometimes a lot of people ask me, like, does the conservative movement permit this or that? Okay. The way I would know is I would go to this huge database, which is accessible to the public. Yeah, it's called the CJLS, the Committee on Jewish Laws and Standards. Okay, it's a very interesting body. I think I've like 24 rabbis that sit in New York. But rabbis fly from all over the world a few times a year, and they sit down and they write these very serious, learned papers that are called responsa, okay? And they give answers to questions that people have from all over the world for the conservative movement. What is the position of the conservative movement on this issue, for example? There's like, so once in a while, if there's like a big hot topic, like I think it was like in the 90s or 2000s, like, would the rabbinical seminaries admit gay students? Okay, that was like a very big issue, I think in the 90s or maybe in the 2000s. Okay, so that was covered all over the news. The whole world wanted to know because the reform movement allowed that. The Orthodox movement said absolutely not. Oh, what would the conservative movement say? So that was like covered in the news, in the New York Times, it's like everywhere, okay? In the 80s, could women be ordained to be rabbis? Okay, so these are hot topics. But, you know, Davar Chadash is not such a big hot topic. There's no release press, but you should know that's the majority of the material there. It's like these simple day-to-day questions, yeah?
I've looked up responsa from time to time, and rarely is it any unanimous vote. It's so many for, so many against. Sometimes the against wins, and I don't know. And sometimes I guess they just leave it up to the local rabbi. They don't always make a hard decision.
No. So I want to. You're correct, but I want to frame it in a different way. It's like from the 24 rabbis. It's not only rabbis. There's also some lay leaders. Okay, they get to. I don't remember if they get to vote or just.
I don't think they vote.
They don't vote, but they participate in the deliberations, etc. However, if I don't agree with my friend that wrote a certain responsa, Okay, I could write a dissenting opinion. Okay, and then the committee would vote. If I get 6 votes and my friend would get 13 votes, okay? Both responses are admitted and are legitimate because the minimum is 6 rabbis that vote on your responsa. Everyone is committed to reading very thoroughly these responses, and once you get 6 votes, even if you're minority opinion, you have a valid opinion, which can then be adopted by the local rabbi. So any local rabbi can adopt a 6 persons vote. If it's under 6, then it's rejected, and then it's not a legitimate. It's not accepted by citizens. So that is very serious process. So let's
There were people
understand.
who voted in opposition on this and also abstained.
Some people also abstain. You can also do that. Which is also a good question. What does that mean, right? What is your position then on this matter? Because it's like either yes or no, like, but it's
Yeah,
like,
that maybe, I guess.
yeah, it's a maybe. Okay, so just so we understand its structure, so here is like the title, definition of a davar chadash, a new thing. Written by Rabbi Kaisel Abelson and Meir Rabinovitz, 2 great scholars that I actually know, and actually friends of my parents who are on the Zoom with us today. Hello to my parents in Israel. And then it says this paper was adopted on November 7th, 1984, so it's been a while. I just saw yesterday that they released, and they're going to be releasing an article in the next few weeks by another rabbi who's examining exactly this question and might have a different opinion. So it's going to come up again. It came up again because technology has changed and food industry has changed over the years, right? So members voting in favor, and now list all the rabbis that are in favor. And then it says voting in opposition, which is Rabbi Joe Roth, who's a very traditional rabbi in the conservative movement. He's always like more to the right wing, and I am sure he voted against this, okay, because he wouldn't accept that. And members abstaining, as we said, they don't have an opinion.
Can a non-rabbi scientist participate?
Yeah, they do. They definitely, if you look at the second page here, you'll see they consult with scientists. They go through the whole process. We're going to read through this and see how thorough this is, which is also unique to the conservative movement. Okay, I'm not saying that Orthodox rabbis don't go to scientists, but they might not change their minds, even if science shows like different proof. In the conservative movement, part of the thinking is that science advances and changes, and therefore, okay, our reality has changed, and we could rule something different. In the Orthodox world, they might say that, they said, but our hands are tied because the Talmud says something, even if the Talmud says something inaccurate, okay? So in that sense, the conservative movement is very thorough and walks, is aligned with the science. Yeah.
Are contributions from non-Jewish scientists accepted?
Oh, yeah, that doesn't matter. The truth is out there. It's like, you just need to find it. Okay,
These
so
rabbis have
Shayla,
life positions or they term out.
no, they term out. I was offered to be on the committee, but it was just too much.
It's a lot of work, I think.
Yeah, I go to New York a few times a year. You gotta read all these articles. You have to write yourself and research. I've written some responsa as well, and I submitted it to them in the past. Okay, so Shayla is a question. Okay. The presence of chemical additives in so many foods presents a problem for those who observe kashrut. Some of the additives may be derived from substances that were originally non-kosher or dairy, right? Is there a point at which such additives lose their original character and therefore foods containing them can be considered kosher? Okay, the person who's asking this question is a knowledgeable Jew. Okay, someone who's not knowledgeable would say is like, what do you mean? How could you take something not kosher and use it with something kosher? That's not possible. No, it is possible. It's an option of Talmud. And now they come with the tshuva. The tshuva means the responsa, the response. The answer to this question is crucial. Why is it crucial? For almost all processed foods contain additives. Okay, so they are reflecting a very simple fact in our lives today. If you cannot use food additives from that source, it'd be very hard to be keeping a kosher these days. How we answer this question, therefore, will determine whether vast number of food products whose main ingredients are kosher will be considered kosher, or because of a minuscule amount of chemical additives be considered non-kosher and not permitted for observant Jews, which would make sense, but again, the halacha is more complex. Two previous responsa by Dr. Isaac Klein, one of the greatest scholars of the conservative movement on Jewish law, the kashrut of gelatin and the kashrut of cheeses deal with the kashrut of food additives, as does the responsum adopted by the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, the kashrut of mono and diglycerides, which also appears in this volume. A key principle is cited by Dr. Klein when he says that the term davar chadash, a new thing, or panim chadashot, new face, used by Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grudinsky, is a very famous Orthodox rabbi at the end of the 19th century, reflects an important principle. When a substance goes through a transformation that changes it into something completely new, it also loses its former status in regard to being forbidden food. Okay? Based on this conclusion, a substance treated by another substance which transforms, page 188, chemically thus becomes a panim sadashot. So Mr. Milk or whatever it is, now added to a lot of other things, or non-kosher additives that were added and reprocessed again, and now we have something new. We have gelatin, whatever it is. These are like new faces, like, oh, hello, you're something new. You're no longer that old thing. And now they come to a very interesting concept written by Rabbi Joel Roth. That's a rabbi that I said who's very traditional and opposed this responsa, but they quote him, which is something you also need to do in a halachic debate. You always have to quote the dissenting opinions. You have to give them room and you have to debate with them and you have to kill them, right? Or else you didn't do the job. Definition of Rabbis Jeffrey Bokarsley and Joel Roth in their paper toward the definition of davar chadash raised the question of criteria by which to judge whether the chemical transformation of a food additive is sufficient to change its kashrut status. Okay, please note something very, very important. Rabbi Joel Roth, who opposes this responsa, does not oppose the concept of davar chadash. He accepts that you can transform something. He's just debating what is the right chemical process define this as a davar chadash, as something new. Okay, so that concept is well embedded in Jewish tradition. Okay, they suggest the adoption of a standard for the creation of a davar chadash as follows: any chemical reaction which breaks a carbon-to-carbon bond in the central non-substituent carbon skeleton of an organic compound, or breaks a connecting linkage between two macromolecular subunits, creates a davar chadash. The reason for this, they assert, is to ensure that major and truly fundamental chemical change has occurred before it can be considered a davar chadash. Okay, so they are requiring a very high to date and very high bar level of determining that something has changed through this chemical reactions, and they are basically creating a new category in that sense. Yeah.
So if a company changes the chemical structure of something or changes an additive before they can, and it's been a certified kosher product before that. Who lets the rabbis know that we've changed, we've tweaked something? Or could it just happen and somebody could
No, but that,
accidentally?
that's a very good question. That's the job of the mashgiach. The mashgiach sits down in the factory and checks every product that comes in, every food additive that is added, and then he would want to know, where is it from, where is it made at, okay? And you would check the process as well. So these mashgichim have a hard job, and they have to fly all over the world. They have to fly to, China and, a lot of places. And all expenses paid, so they also get to see the world. But then you see like these, bunch of like 20 Hasidim getting off a plane, and like the place is like, what are you guys doing here? Oh, we're here to inspect the factory. I'm like, okay, that's gonna be
So
interesting.
they're hugely popular,
Okay, why?
hugely popular.
Yeah. Well, there's like, I don't know if you saw this,
As a cartoon.
Sugim, right? This,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the movie, the Israeli series that are on Netflix with the ultra orthodox.
Yeah.
So, at the opening scene, the husband is a mashgiach, and he leaves every time he leaves for 3-4 months. He goes to be a shochet, slaughter, yeah. So I think he goes to Argentina. It's like it's a big kosher industry, and he finds a non-Jewish woman there, and he leaves like tradition, altogether. And they are back in Israel, in Bnei Brak, I don't remember, Mea Shearim in Jerusalem, and like the whole family falls apart. These religions, Shisa,
Yeah, and so give us
Shisa.
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
theories.
in Shisa, right, yeah. So these things, these things come to a movie, right? Okay, so let's see what they think about what Rabbi Roth and his colleague wrote. There's no halachic need to depart from common usage and to arbitrarily define a davar chadash as the breaking of a carbon bond. The ordinary language of chemistry provides us with an appropriate definition which meets the rabbinic criteria for visible change in the food additive, which is chemically a compound. A compound is defined as a substance composed of atoms or ions of 2 or more elements in chemical combination. Chemical combination means the presence of bonds or valence forces between the constituent atoms. I don't understand much of the chemical process here, I must admit.
It's just the attraction between the atoms, between the atom, the nucleus, the electron.
Yeah, but basically what they're saying, use the regular definition. You don't have to, go beyond what Jewish law requires for that change, okay? And they're saying whenever a new bond forms, a new compound is created, and I'm going to go to the 5th line here in that paragraph, where it says, if this compound, in the middle of the paragraph, if this compound is not the same one that led to the transient species, and it could readily be determined by chemical analysis, then a new compound has been created. That's it. Thus, the simplest way to define davar chadash, a new thing, is a new compound formed by the breaking of old chemical bonds and the forming of new bonds. Okay, so that needs to be, you don't have to have a more strict definition, and you can use this, which is really what the intention of halacha was. Like the Jewish tradition in the Talmud emphasizes that have you ever heard the expression like that even a dog doesn't want to eat it? Okay. That it's so repelling in that sense because it's like it's already bad. So something that's already bad, if it's added, if it's not kosher or if it's dairy to begin with, but now it's changed its form so much and it became so bad, if you add it to a food, okay, it does not cancel the food from being kosher. Okay, that's a concept in the Talmud. okay, that the rabbis brought in. There is a dispute in the Talmud, which is very interesting. Because the assumption in Talmud is what happens if it makes the food worse and now I don't want to eat it because it's bad, like I have bad stuff in it. Okay, so then they say it's kosher. Okay, you eat something and it's bad. Okay, you didn't transgress. But then the rabbi said, wait, what if it improved the food in some way? Okay, they say it would still be kosher, okay, because it's considered a davar chadash, it's considered a new thing. We don't regard it anymore as something that used to be dairy or non-kosher. Do you remember the first case I gave you, right? When we had 3 pieces of meat, right? Okay, so we had 3 pieces of meat, they look exactly the same, okay, and now they mix together. One of them is kosher, the other is kosher, and the second one is non-kosher. Okay, and now they mix, and I want to eat, can I eat them? I don't know which is kosher and non-kosher anymore. Okay. I don't know, they're all mixed. Can I eat them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
My world.
can I eat this one?
No.
Oh, no.
Why?
Because it's not kosher.
How do you know?
Yeah.
Because you wrote it down.
No, but they're all mixed.
Oh, all mixed together?
They're all mixed together. I can't
Oh,
tell. There's
meatloaf.
3 pieces of meat.
Majority.
Meatloaf.
Majority rule.
I thought you said before you could.
No, are they separate or they combine? Like
They're
you-
separate. They're
Okay, you
separate.
can't eat just one.
I cannot eat.
I think.
You can.
So
You can't,
tell.
right? What did we
Saying
learn?
no.
Majority rules,
Yeah.
okay? He was a very good student, okay? The majority rules. This is like a halachic concept that you go and determine according to the majority. So which one should I eat? I don't know, okay? Can I eat 2 of them? Okay, so some rabbi says yes, some rabbis say you can't eat all 3 of them because you would be eating,
Admitted that you.
you, for one of them is for sure not kosher. But the rabbis that attack that opinion say, no, this is a new composition. They are all kosher because the majority overrules
Oh.
the minority and it takes over completely. And this is exactly the same concept that we have here, okay? So keeping kosher, everyone says, oh, it's very strict, it's very, but you need to understand it's not always that strict. It's sometimes it also works in a way that lets you live in life and and it also takes into account, like we're gonna get to that soon, that if you have like a big pot of a beef stew and a drop of milk falls
That's fine.
inside, okay? You cannot do that to begin with. I've heard of a chef who said, oh, I have a huge pot, I'll just put 1, butter, a scoop. No, that is not permissible. And that will actually, if you do it to begin with and deliberately, then it's not permissible to eat it, okay? But if it happens by accident, then it is okay and permissible under certain, if it will be 2 non-kosher and 1 kosher, no, that would not be okay.
I have a
Rabbi.
question.
Yeah,
If the non-kosher in its hiding way is pork,
it doesn't matter what it is.
so you can eat pork?
No, you cannot eat pork. You cannot eat pork.
Let's try.
It's not pork anymore. Not pork. It's a davar chadash. It is something new. Okay,
Well, I think what she's saying is you have 3 pieces of meat. And 2 are kosher, 1 is pork.
well, but you could tell pork meat.
I don't really know.
I don't either.
Well,
Seriously, I.
Not with the additives today.
You have to, yeah, I have
Rabbi,
that.
well, if
mean,
you're using fertilizer on the plant food and something is added to the fertilizer, does that also get checked by the rabbis to make sure that they're not fertilizing the animal, the food that the chicken or the cow eats.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's absorbed through
So a
the
chicken can
body.
eat
Yeah.
beef, that's not kosher, but that.
The animals can eat anything, and they do.
Yeah. The only question is before Passover with chametz. That's a separate question.
Rabbi, it was
Yeah.
a funny story a long
Feed
time
your
ago.
chicken.
There was a columnist for the LA Times, whose name I just forgot. But anyhow, he was writing this article and his daughter-in-law, Jack Smith.
Mhm.
And he wrote about his French daughter-in-law who would feed the snails that she found in the garden,
Uh-huh.
The cornmeal.
something to.
Yeah, that,
Yeah, to pure.
that's known. Yeah.
So a friend, a Jewish friend, wanted to know that if he fed the snails in his garden matzah meal,
That's funny.
would that kosher the snails so he could then eat the
Of course,
snails?
it was the right blessing, right? Yeah, no, that doesn't happen that way. All right. Wait. So look at the second paragraph from the end. Okay, let's just finish this part. Chemical analysis can determine whether such a chemical change has taken place and a new compound is present. A new compound, the davar chadash, will exhibit different physical properties which meets the rabbinic criteria of visible change. If the new compound performs a different function than the old compound, it is a further indication that it is a davar chadash. Okay, e.g., mono and diglycerides function as emulsifiers, while triglycerides function as fat. Okay, so I don't think we said that triglycerides is one of the things that are kosher. And what's even more interesting is look at the last paragraph. To further clarify the definition, it should be noted that extracts, which can be easily reconstituted into the original material, e.g. skim milk powder by the addition of water, are not new compounds, and therefore not considered a davar chadash, right? So we have all kind of powders that we could say they were changed chemically, but their purpose is to go back and serve as their original form. They would not be considered as a davar chadash, as a new thing. They would still be deemed as dairy. Okay, and then you have an interesting chart here, but the conclusion is chemical additives which meet the criteria of davar chadash when added to food do not affect the kashrut of the food product. That's the bottom line. So yeah, was there a question?
No, my girlfriend years ago, an American girl a friend of mine was working in a hospital in Israel and accidentally took a tea bag out of the wrong kitchen on the
Oh,
patient floor. The place shut down. They had to get the machine,
oh my God.
a whole thing for a tea bag.
Well,
Okay,
Tea bag is,
that is an extreme.
that's just parve.
Yeah, and it's par. It doesn't make sense.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
does any of this apply to medicine, medications?
We will get to medicine in a moment. And there is actually a new, because yesterday I got an email from the CJLS, that committee, and there's also a new response on medicine for Passover specifically, what could be consumed on Passover or not. So I'll get that for you as well, but we'll look at, we'll see medicine in a minute.
Insulin.
Let's go back to page 322, our paragraph of food additives, the second paragraph. Okay, one specific food impacted by the kashrut of additives is cheese, specifically focusing on rennet, an additive which helps the cheese to curdle. The Committee on Jewish Law and Standards of the Rabbinical Assembly has determined that commercially made cheeses, unless they are mixed with non-kosher ingredients, like ham or something like that, can be considered kosher even without a hechsher, because the rennet or microbial renin are a totally new food, as noted above. This is one area of difference between the conservative and orthodox movements. Okay, this is a very big difference, and it's still in dispute in the conservative movement. Okay, where this food additives, which is the rennet, which is made out of meat, and the question is, did it change its format so much that it could be considered something new, davar chadash? The problem with that is that in ancient times, and even until today in Europe, like in fine places that make cheese, okay, they put the cheese inside the stomach of an animal, of sheep or something like that, to make it. I think that's where it ferments and becomes like the best. Anyone here knows what?
I think the rennet.
That's what the
And the rennet is like, yeah, it's all over the stomach of the animal. Okay, and I see Autumn's face is shocked because
No, it's true.
but now you understand why you're vegan, right?
Yeah.
Keep being vegan. Keep being vegan. But that, yeah. So that's how they do cheese, and then that's sort of like, so there was a dispute, and they would take Jewish cheeses and would put it there, okay? But sometimes they would allow it, sometimes they won't. The even more bizarre thing, they said, okay, but at least do it in kosher animals. But how does that make sense? That's like still meat and milk, okay?
Yeah.
So they said it's because it's davar chadash, because it changes its form so much, okay? And they've left that practice altogether, but the rabbis today said adding the rennet is too much like doing that, okay? So they wanted to like ban it completely. And in the conservative movement, some of the rabbis that supported this said, no, it's okay because it's davar chadash. It's like a new thing that transforms it completely, and it's no longer a meat product. Recently, okay, so like I know, like a lot of synagogues don't allow, the non-kosher cheeses, but we do allow people who bring things from their homes, and if they cook it at home, we do allow them to use that, but we don't bring it into the kitchen afterwards. So if and we'll talk about like the synagogue policy when we meet next week. We're meeting in the kitchen, and we can actually review that policy that we're actually forming these days. But recently, actually, with the help of Miriam Cohen, I learned that there's microbial enzymes. Okay, so you have regular enzymes, which is the rennet, which is a meat product that has changed its form and added to the cheese. But you also have microbial. Microbial enzymes are made in a vegetarian way. I'm not, it's like it's a kind of like a process which is done chemically only, in some way, shape, or form. I'm not an expert on that, but I saw enough to understand that it's preferred to use the microbial enzymes than the regular enzymes. And those cheeses, I was like happy to see you can buy here in pavilions. Ralph has a smaller selection, but in pavilions, they're like organic selection. And then I was like really surprised to see in Whole Foods down the road, everything there is with microbial, because they're all about like health consciousness. So so a lot of stuff are there with microbial enzymes, and it makes it much easier to get the cheeses in that sense. They don't say kosher, so you won't find them in an Orthodox home, but I feel a little bit more comfortable that it's like somewhere in between in that regard. So it could, and it is accessible to us as well to purchase in our area. The last additives that I wanted to talk about here in this article, in this paragraph, is gelatin. Okay. Yet another difference between many conservative and Orthodox rabbis in the area of kashrut involves gelatin. Gelatin is made from dried hide, bones, horns, and hoofs which are not edible in an unprocessed state. Okay? Because the process that reduces them to gelatin essentially creates a new entity. Many conservative rabbis permit the use of gelatin even without a specific hechsher in food products. Okay, so gelatin is like a huge issue. It's been written so many stuff on it. There's some Orthodox rabbis that would permit it, but most don't. But it is something that the conservative movement permits as well.
So Jello is made from bones and horns and hoofs and.
Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things, if you know what the ingredients are, you don't wanna eat
You
them.
don't wanna eat them, yeah. And then I don't know how it goes in the vegan world. Like, do they use something like that in the vegan world?
At all.
Because it's from animals. Interesting. Not even like fish gelatin or anything like that. Right, okay, makes sense. There's artificial gelatin, made. Okay,
Yeah.
Wasn't that gooey stuff
Okay.
inside the fish jar?
the last, let's do one more, wines and liqueurs, okay? There are many issues involved in decisions about what kind of wine to use in a kosher home. Through the generations, use of wine that was not kosher certified, called stam yeinam, plain wine, was banned largely to reduce this possibility of extended social intercourse between Jews and non-Jews. Okay, so there are three different kinds of wine in the halachic world. Okay, one is called yain nesech. Okay, nesech wine, which is used for a sacrificial work of monks, for example. Okay, or idolatry or anything like that, and that would be like a big no-no because it's used for other faith sacrificial use. So that is in any even conservative movement, that is a big no-no. Then there is stam yinam. Stam means just a plain. Okay, plain wine. Some people say it's permitted. Okay, from a kosher point of view, it's fine. It's okay. You can drink it because it's wine that the non-Jews are making, okay, not for sacrificial reasons, okay, and you can use it, okay. And then there is regular kosher wine, which is done by Jews and only by Jews and only for the purpose of of drinking with Jews. Why would plain wine, the middle category, not be permissible? Not because it's not kosher, but because of social reasons, okay? That if I start drinking, with your family and I have, a teenage daughter and you have a teenage son and they, all interact, so they'll, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have teenage, I meant college age, okay? Who knows what they would do afterwards, okay? And that's why you're banned to do that. So notice there are some things that are considered kosher, even done by someone who's not Jewish, okay? But there are other things like bread, etc., that they sort of like make the meal. Okay, so they are not permissible when done by someone not Jewish. But then they start arguing about olive oil. What about olive oil? Is that like a basic food or not? So most authorities would rule no, olive oil is fine. Olive oil, which is made by non-Jews, completely pressed in their factory. Okay, that's going to be totally kosher. Anyone can eat it. It doesn't have to have a hechsher. It doesn't have to be supervised by a rabbi. Okay, so there are different categories of food that don't necessarily have to do with the actual making of what products is in there. Now we come to a very big question. So let's say the conservative movement now decides, okay, we're not going to go by that because social norms have changed, etc. The Orthodox world is maybe more excluded from the rest of the world in that sense. There's like they want to be guarded more maybe from and the conservative movement, they would say, no, times have changed, like, it's like, it's a different, like, hopefully I don't go and have a beer with my, neighbor and then who knows what happens between the other members of the family, right?
God.
Didn't,
So,
No, it's,
when you talked about, what was it?
the Nesach,
Yeah, no, but didn't that go back to where it couldn't be kosher if you had pagans making the wine?
yeah, no, that's exactly the point. The Nesach is like sacrificial wine used by them for that purpose. Again, it could be kosher, but you cannot drink it and enjoy it because there's a whole concept of, like, wine is something you enjoy. It also changes your mind, okay, and your state of mind in that sense. And we use it also for religious reasons.
Mhm.
So you can't take something that was used for idolatry work, okay, and then use it for your own religious ceremony. That won't work.
We wanted to serve Yardin wine at my daughter's wedding at the Sephardic temple, but their servers, their waiters are not Jewish, so we could not have that wine.
Oh, wow, interesting. So there's some,
Yeah.
that is, yeah, so
Ridiculous.
that makes it even more complicated because then there's a question of if the wine was, you know the term in winery, like that you cook the wine,
Mevushal, yeah.
mevushal,
Boiled.
right? That you boil it to a certain
Yeah.
temperature,
Right.
and then you could be served by someone who's not Jewish.
It says.
If the wine is not cooked, which makes it like a more, like a better wine, okay?
That makes it kosher.
So that, so there are a lot of parts that I'm not talking about here, okay?
The
When you-
alcohol evaporates.
No,
No, you
when
bring
you
it
look
to
at
a
the bottle,
certain
it says
temperature.
wine, like mevushal kosher, so it's been
Oh.
cooked and it's fine and yeah, anyone can serve it.
Yeah, so it's like there are different categories in that sense, and also who opens the bottle of wine, etc. Because in the Orthodox concept, from the minute you plant the grapes until you serve the wine, the whole process needs to all be done by Jews
Right.
who keep Shabbat
Yes.
to its full extent, okay? Okay? Like they won't accept me as someone who would be working in the wine industry for that regard. It's very, very, very strict in that regard. But we didn't even talk about the whole part that so in the conservative movement, they sort of like all these things, they just like not relevant, not relevant, not relevant, not okay. So they came up with a conclusion that if the wine itself is kosher, then it could be used even if it doesn't have a hechsher. Okay, that's a very famous responsa written by Rabbi Elliot Dorff, who's a great scholar in Los Angeles in the American Jewish University, and he wrote this very famous responsa. So let's read that part, okay? Various responsa of the Rabbinical Assembly have allowed the use of non-certified wines, but recommended the exclusive use of kosher certified wines for ritual purposes. This is another area of difference between the conservative and Orthodox movements. The preference, however, remains for use of kosher certified wines and wines from Israel when possible. So we are also trying to do some kind of a hierarchy here. It's like we would prefer that it's kosher wines. We would even prefer that you get it from the land of Israel, right? The land of milk and honey. Israel is very known for its good wineries now. So like support, Yarden and all. And I understand also that the head of the Yarden winery is from our community, right?
Yeah.
Near
Oh,
Tamim.
Schoenfeld.
Yeah, it's the
Schoenfeld.
Schoenfeld.
There is somebody that
Yeah.
I know had the winery.
Yeah, so yeah, when
Wine.
you look at the
There's a-
Yarden bottle, it says the name of
Well,
the person
my
that grew up
cousin,
in our
Harry's
nation
cousin
here.
grows the grapes.
We should go and visit him one day in his winery in Golan Heights.
He was never there.
So part of now we're on page 323, because I just want to end. Part of the process of manufacturing wine is fining or clarifying the wine. This particular aspect of winemaking can also be problematic in terms of the laws of kashrut, because the CGLS, however, has concluded that wine fined with unkosher or dairy substances is not unkosher or dairy. Because in ancient times, they used to refine the wine, okay, and clarifying it through putting it through this, filters, yeah, that were done in a way with these non-kosher products. And then the question is, does it absorb it or does not absorb it? Was a very big question. And then another question I get asked all the time is beers. Some beers and alcoholic beverages are made under kashrut supervision, but many are not. The majority are not, of beers are not done under rabbinic supervision. And they are okay also by Orthodox. Orthodox also drink beer,
Yeah.
whiskey, and all these things, gin and tonic, all that. They don't require a hechsher. Because many liquors are based on wine or brandy, or might have a small amount of wine or brandy added to them. Some products that are acceptable to consumers who freely drink stam yinam, plain wine, may not have a hechsher for that reason. But beer and grain-based liquors do not require formal kashrut supervision during the manufacturing process, nor. Whoa, are you okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh. Whoa, what'd you hit?
Did you hit? No, that positive. Thank you, sorry.
Wow.
No.
You hit your head. Are you okay?
Yeah, thank you. No, just, nothing, thank you.
Maybe we should get you ice.
Hey,
Down
there. Yeah,
Just leaning back.
Thank you very much, just leaning back too far.
yeah. Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Well, you certainly know how to answer plan.
Okay.
That was mini hard.
Serious?
I was so shocked about the wine.
I don't.
Hang up ending. You'll have to ask if there's a doctor. You're a doctor.
Chair, everyone sits in these chairs, if they come back a little
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. I have to say that almost happened to me. I'll stop rocking them too much. It's some of the longer meetings.
We're worried about you.
Yeah, okay, George.
Does that, by the way, when the Catholics have communion, and I don't know what wine they use, but it.
Not ours. Not Minishevitz.
Right,
We don't worry about that.
I don't use that service either.
yeah, we don't. So in any event, among the authorities who disallow stam yinam, plain wine, some also prohibit alcohol that has been aged in wine casks, including some kinds of scotch and Irish whiskey, bourbon, which must be aged in new casks, is not impacted by that issue. And many of these issues are discussed elsewhere in this volume by Rabbi Jeremy Kalbanovsky in his chapter on interfaith relations, okay? Because we have to understand that we can't just say, all these things that are made by a non-Jew, or if a non-Jew is involved in the process, here's some. So we can't just say it and not understand that there are implications, right? We're talking with Jews and non-Jews. We're in an open society. So when you're saying to someone who's not Jewish, anything that you do would be unkosher, okay? You could say that, but it has implications in that sense, especially if we want to build relationship. And especially in today's world, when we do have interfaith families and you want to bring, let's say there's like a mixed marriage and you want to bring the non-Jewish spouse closer to Judaism, you want to make them, you can't just say, oh, this is not kosher, everything that you do. You have to work and interact with that. You can't sort of like, oh, this problem doesn't exist in this world. On the contrary, you're just pushing people away. You have to deal with it and see how that is done, which is the next part, which will start next week, which is food cooked by non-Jews. Actually, next week we're going to meet in the kitchen. So either we will continue with this and go to the kitchen. You know what? No, then okay, let's say 2 more minutes, because the next paragraph is the kosher kitchen. So I'm sorry, 2 more minutes. Page 323, food cooked by non-Jews. Some authorities maintain that staple foods such as bread must be cooked or baked solely by Jews, and that this rule applies without respect to the question of the kashrut of the ingredients involved. Okay, again, everything can be 100% kosher, but a non-Jew prepared it, it cannot be eaten. The resultant ban on foods cooked by non-Jews was a way to reduce social contact between the communities. Okay, again, that same thinking. if I allow my non-Jewish neighbor to come in with a pie, okay, a blueberry pie is what you're supposed to eat tomorrow, right? So, and they come in, so then all the families are gonna be sitting together and, guess what's gonna happen, afterwards in the pool?
Sounds
When the kids go okay,
Especially if you have it with wine.
and wine, right, and everything together, okay, why?
So how do you say no?
Well, think about the reality in the Middle Ages, okay, when they would live in a village and there would be Jewish families and
Why don't you
non-Jewish families.
don't go back?
Okay?
Talk.
Yeah,
Don't tell me what to do, I know about the chair.
okay, yeah, we're gonna watch you, everyone needs to be careful today.
Everybody's
Uh,
got supervision.
So Chaya, so you would wanna guard your children in that sense, because you wouldn't wanna assimilate. Today's a different reality, right? Like we're in a completely different reality, but this is the thinking of the halacha. So even if like the neighbor would say, oh, but I use everything kosher, okay, especially for you. I was like, thank you, but no, thank you. So you have to be, very considerate in that sense. You have to make rules, like, because not always, like sometimes, like the non-Jewish neighbor doesn't really know what they're doing. So, you have to make, it's a little bit more complicated. But today, most conservative rabbis feel, and this is the conservative movement, most conservative rabbis feel it is counterproductive to create extra halachic rules merely to minimize intercourse between Jews and non-Jews, and do not therefore require that all foods deemed kosher be cooked by Jews. In the word of kashrut symbols and abbreviations, the words Pas Israel, sometimes pronounced Pos Israel, are generally used when a Jew has been directly involved in preparing the food, even in a minimal way, such as simply lighting the oven. Okay, so a lot of these restaurants and factories, a Jew comes at 6 o'clock in the morning, they light the oven and they go away, and you pay them a fortune for that, okay? And then the non-Jew could do everything else. That's not what the original intention was, but it still creates some kind of like a mechanism. The non-Jew wouldn't want to mess around in the kitchen because he knows that, the Mashgiach could always show up.
So you make an exception for the Shabbos boy.
Well, that's a separate, we talk
That's
about
another
that,
lecture,
but-
another time.
This issue too is discussed by Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky in his chapter on interrelations, and that's like more the updated version of what do we do today with this. When milk has been under rabbinic supervision from cow to carton, it is called Chalav Israel, okay, milk of Israel. The concern about drinking milk other than Chalav Israel is based on the fear that a non-Jew might add forbidden milk. Okay, the milk of non-kosher animals to kosher milk. That would make it treif. That would make it non-kosher. But the classical sources already laid the groundwork for setting this worry aside if the Jewish consumer can be certain that such adulteration of the merchandise simply cannot happen. Given the mechanized modern dairy farms of today and USDA supervision, conservative rabbis do not require the purchase solely of Chalav Israel by their congregations or synagogues. Okay, so we can use any milk that that has a kosher symbol on it, and if you're a place where it's not kosher symbol but it's made by the factory, it could also be permissible. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's that for today.